there's so many striking things about this piece. The colors that change, the kinds of little machines that transmogrify. There's so many things, but the title's also fascinating. Do you mind if we start with the title?
Let's start with the title.
Tell us about all that Crossing meant to you as a name for this journey.
I think initially it came from Harold Bloom, the famous literary critic who just passed away actually a few months ago. And he uses it to describe rhetorical disjunctions in poems. And I thought it's really fascinating when, in particular, I think he introduced it analyzing Wallace Stevens's, my beloved Wallace Stevens's poem, The Snowman, in which he thought that we're transported to a different poem by Emerson. And I thought, isn't it fascinating that a piece of art could really take us somewhere else without directly alluding or referring to that? And I think what I'm trying to do is something similar.
Well, that's interesting that you put it that way, because I hear allusions to all kinds of styles and other music that clearly that you love and that you're nodding to or alluding to. Can you tell us more about those influences?
Yes. I mean, maybe it's more interesting if I don't talk directly about composers, but I was thinking that whoever programmed the rest of the concert was very, very smart, because there are two elements that I found in both pieces that are related to the piece that I wrote, without, of course, knowing that it's going to be programmed with these pieces. One is Prokofiev's sort of idea fix obsession with this theme. There's several themes, but all of them come back in some capacity, and that, of course, happens in my piece as well. And in Defaya, the sort of, again, I want to use the word obsession with texture and verticality and color seems very, very related, even though, of course, these were not pieces that I had in mind. There's also Morton Feldman, who I always have to mention just because it's a composer who I think people maybe, especially in the sort of more, certainly in the orchestral world, don't hear enough about, because, of course, he wrote a lot of orchestral music, but it is long and demanding, and so much of it is not performed very frequently. But his interest in, I think, transcendence of some sort is something that I was definitely after.
You do use the orchestra in a very colorful way. Do you approach writing for the orchestra in any way differently than in other mediums that you write for?
Maybe no, and that's exactly why it sounds so colorful, because I think a lot about electronic music. I studied quite a lot of, I worked with analog tapes, so cutting and splicing them and playing them backwards. Especially, I really like that sound where you're sort of pulling the time back. It's like time traveling in some capacity, right? And so that writing is a big part of what I do. I want to be able to stretch time. I want to be able to take us somewhere else in time, both historically and maybe in memory, and all kinds of poetic repercussions that the word time has.